Please, if you don't understand, please grab a phone for translation on the lobby. Então agora todo mundo está falando, tá entendendo, que eu espero que esteja entendendo o que eu estou falando.
I hope you now understand what I'm talking now. If you don't, please grab a simultaneous translation device. It's going to be in Portuguese, but we have simultaneous translation into English and Spanish. So feel free to grab your devices outside. I would like to call our panelists and moderator. It's going to be moderated by our dear. Just a moment, because you're going to have the broadcast.
Então, podemos
So we can now start. I would like to call moderator Gilberto from that data lab, and we are going to start with our panel on technodiversity, digital practice and perspectives in Brazil, and also challenges in the global south. The word is yours. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Gilberto. I'm part of this organization called Data Lab. And tomorrow, my colleague Apolinho is going to talk to you at 2:30 p.m. about our work. And I came to talk about different works, and I'm going to introduce you to incredible people. When ITS invited me, the idea was to call this panel Technodiversity. And I knew this concept through this philosopher called Yuki Hui. He's Chinese, one of the authors who is able to have that conceptual understanding about the practices that we've been employing, especially the group that is going to be part of this panel. And also, other initiatives are also using that concept, and that give us hope to think about the future beyond the catastrophe. And for Yuki Hui, technologies are not universal. They are part of the cosmos. They are part of nature. So thinking about technology and the material and philosophic use of it cannot orient our cosmovisions, but it should work with that. As a compound, as that mix of earth and different living organisms that are making company to us all the time. We have three people here who understand that technologies are made with the planet and not for the planet. So I'm very moved to introduce you to Alex Potiguara. Come to the stage, Alex. Alex, he's a doctor and master in technology and digital design from the Catholic University in São Paulo. He has more than 10 years in educational projects, and also he's a member of the Pindorama program at the Catholic University in São Paulo, and he's been using digital tools in indigenous programs. Thank you. And I'd like to call Nina da Hora up to the stage. Come on, Nina. Nina is a computing science researcher, activist. She's been part of the Getúlio Vargas Foundation programs in Brazil. She's a master's student in artificial intelligence and algorithm intelligence at Unicamp. She works with this idea of responsible technologies, and she works globally to build this concept and applying that in different concepts. She's wonderful. Last but not least, I'd like to call to the stage Joaquim Melo. Joaquim is a theologist and an expert in local development, community banks, and social currency. He talks about local development, solidarity economy, social productive inclusion, social currency, and he has many texts on the development of solidarity, finances, and local development. So we can think about the future during this panel. And we are going to start with Joaquim Melo. Please feel comfortable to speak during 15 minutes, and then we are going to listen to Nina and then Alex, and we're going to have some time to debate on the topic later on. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great joy to be here with you. I'd like to thank the coordinators of this event for inviting me and for being bold because I'm a popular leader. I'm a community leader. I come from the favela. I don't understand anything about computers, internet. I barely use WhatsApp and Instagram, and that's all. So, in such an event to be invited, it was quite bold from you. But I have this rare privilege. I live in a favela, and we built a network on community banks and social currencies, and that was a project that engaged with technology. And thanks to technology, we had the best moments in our lives, and we also felt the worst pains due to technology. So I won't create any theory, any knowledge. I won't produce knowledge here because I wouldn't know how to do that. So I will try to use my time, 15 minutes. I will try to tell this story of 25 years in Brazil, trying to talk about this topic, which is technology. The lady just told me to look at her, not to the back. But I can't because I cannot see anyone here. So please show my slides. I'm not able to see anything on the screen. So for you to understand the end of the story, you have to understand the beginning. So this is the city of Fortaleza in the state of Ceará, in the northeast of Brazil. It's a coastal region, and they expelled us in the 70s to create the chic hotels in the coastal area of Fortaleza. I have to look back, I'm sorry, but should I speak from the pulpit? I'm going to be very nervous. Okay. So we were displaced to this great favela in Fortaleza called Palmeiras. It was a great favela with projects, and we were 30,000 families. At that time, Brazil was leaving the dictatorship, and we were thrown there as animals. And we created this residents association, and we work within civil society to build houses, churches, daycare, schools, and we build our lives together. And at the end of the 90s, we found out that we had a better life with houses, with schools, but we were still poor, economically speaking. And we were poor because we were buying from the big corporations, from our clothes. And I'm proud to say that this cloth that I'm wearing is Palma fashion made by the seamstress in my neighborhood. But before that, we bought from the great corporations. That's why we were poor, because we had to give our money to the big ones. And we decided to create a bank. We were very proud to build this Palmas Bank with 2,000 reais in our pockets. The bank experienced bankruptcy on the day it was launched, but I won't tell this story because the topic here is technology. And we lent money for people who wanted to build community companies for cleaning materials and sweets and cheese. And we also lent money for those who wanted to buy the local companies, because that was the greatest challenge. Because they only wanted to buy in shopping malls from big corporations. So we created this currency that we call a social currency, and that's when it started. That social currency, it was a money that we had, and people lent money from the bank using this currency. It only circulated in that region where we lived, with 50,000 people there. And we started to create small local businesses. And people could use the social currency to buy. So in drugstores and the gas stations, they could use that. So if you had 1,000 reais lent, you would pay this fee of 50 cents. It came from this community fund that lent money for those who wanted to produce. I still have 10 minutes. Wonderful, because I didn't get to technology yet. So that was fantastic, because everybody started to use this currency. And then they could go to the bank and they could exchange that currency for reais. And we had this local savings. And everyone was able to buy in the local companies, generating jobs and money. And we had cleaning products being sold. We had Palma fashion stores. We had everything that we wanted to live. And we used that currency called palmas, that money that was only circulating there, and they could exchange it for reais. And that idea spread throughout Brazil. And the social currency is a great symbol, because we had coins that were related to 1 real, 2 reais, 50 cents, and they had beautiful pictures. They had indigenous peoples. They had also fish on it, and different communities, from riverside communities, quilombo communities, indigenous communities. They started to use the same idea. We had community banks with social currencies, each one buying from their own communities. It was not a great bank. Hundreds of banks, 113 of them, over 100,000 notes in all Brazil. And that worked, and we were happy with that. And the central bank was concerned about that. It's a long story. They wanted to know how those currencies were working, and every year we had to tell them how many bills we had, and we had spreadsheets and reports. It was a lot of work, but we were very happy with this currency working with the color, the face of the community on it. One beautiful day, a tech company came, and they told us the following. This is very beautiful, this is great, but it's a lot of work, right? And they were right. We had to print the bills and graphics. We had to fill in the spreadsheet, send it to the central bank, and they told us we could have a digital currency. You can end up the bills. We can develop an app, and each place can only use their own currency. If the person is out of the community, the app won't work. So it's the same thing, but it's digital now. I thought it was wonderful. So now you're going to have a dashboard and everything is going to be ready for you. Many banks didn't accept that. We were like that at the time. But many banks, community banks, thought that they shouldn't accept that because they wouldn't have their own identity on the bills with the marks of the community. But a great group of them accepted, and we were able to migrate that to this digital company. I don't want to demonize technology or companies. I'm going to talk about the story of the company. This is my story, and then you're going to listen from that company to come to your conclusions. I'm not here to badmouth them. So they told us, let's have this agreement. Let's digitalize the currency. Let's have a dashboard. Let's send it to the central bank. That was wonderful. We didn't need paper. We only needed the app. We were able to buy using the app in different communities. And then after we were able to transform the currencies into digital currencies, the company came to us and said, now I don't want this business anymore. It's not so profitable as I imagined because we divided the fees. So they had half of the fees. Now I migrated into digital, and now you want to buy to sell that platform. I was trying to convince the company that it was terrible for them because the media was talking about that, about the different communities, and it was horrible for the company to say that they would sell that. And they decided to sell it for me for 100,000 reais. And so I had the platform now, and we went to the notary office, and they told me this is it. This is the login information. You can enter the app, but we didn't understand anything about computers, about the digital world. What would we do?
So I hired a company that was the owner to provide services for us because we didn't know how to deal with that platform. And that was very good. We started growing because we were digital. The municipal government started paying their bills with our platform. Each one of these cards is a social currency. It worked as a debit card. It was a boom. In 2 years, the digital technology brought us lots of good things and a fantastic growth. And in a few years, we were 130 banks, over 135,000 users, 21 states in Brazil, over 13,000 shops accepted the local currency, and it came the time for us to have our technology company. We were very strong in Brazil. Lots of people were accepting our currency, and we created Palmas Lab with young people from the outskirts of the cities. So we gathered 50 young people and we created this lab. And we told them, tell us what we know, and we're going to continue with our company. That's what we called at the time technological shackles. We did not make a good choice. The company told us what to do and not the other way around, because the owner of the company told us, you created the lab, you have to pay us for it. We thought that we would be good friends. with the company, and now we had our technological lab, and it was very fair for us to continue on our own. But we created what we call technological shackles. So what was the symptoms of these technological shackles? When we got the source code, there was no history on it. So they were the only ones that could work on the source code because they created the platform. The database was not intuitive. My programmers, they did not understand whatever was written there. It was written in the way that the company would understand. And we would be tied to them because we could not continue writing the database on our own. They said that part of the code that we purchased was already rewritten, so no, that was no longer our property. We bought it 6 years prior, but the code was rewritten and improved, and it no longer belonged to us. So the company did not accept doing the technological transfer, and they started offering the same services that we offered. So the system started to collapse because they added bugs to the system, and our clients, hundreds of thousands of clients in Brazil, they went to court saying that the service was bad, that they could not use their debit cards, and we were at the hands of the company. There was nothing that we could do, and they would increase the price on the services. There was only one solution. God gave me the solution, which was the very own company employees that created the software coming to work for us. They were our friends, but the CEO of the company did not let them talk to us. So they had to rebel for some reason. And one day the telephone rang, and the senior, I don't know what they call it, but the senior developer told me that he was leaving the company and he was free to accept services. He was a genius in computing. And he said, my salary is going to be very expensive, and goodbye to the company. And he was my last hope. He was a friend of mine. And I told him, I'm not going to buy your salary. I'm going to buy my freedom. So how much do you want? If you come to our lab, how much do you want to work for us in our lab? And that is what happened. We broke up with several workers broke up with the company. All of them left the company in solidarity to us, and we were able to put together in Palmas Lab the same team of the programmers that created the code that were shackled to the company and now were with us. Through a miracle, actually, we were able to break those technological shackles and move on with our project. And today we have a fucking good dashboard. I'm so sorry for the language. How much more time do I have? Oh, it's over. Okay. I'm going to wrap it up now. So we are now in a divine phase. We move millions around Brazil. We continue poor because this company is divided. Each community bank keeps their fees, keeps the income that they generate, and now we are joining a new cycle of technological shackles, which are the big techs, unfortunately. There are several companies from abroad that approach our clients and say that this currency is not that good. They have crypto coins, they have AI, they have the metaverse, and so on, to say that we are obsolete. So I only need an app and a card that circulates locally, generates income, and brings happiness to people. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, Joaquim. Eu acho que essa história
Thank you very much, Joaquim. very symbolic case of how much we are discussing digital sovereignty in Brazil and in other places of the world. We have capacity, strength, and resilience to deal with our own processes. I think we can talk more about that in a few minutes. Nina, please. Thank you, Gilberto. Thank you, Joaquim, for the class. I think you're doing better than the blockchain people. But I'm not going to criticize blockchain today. Thank you to the organizers for the invitation. And thank you to this roundtable. I think each of the people here are working on digital sovereignty and technology in a different way. And I would like to thank everyone who are participating. Since yesterday, they are joining me in all of my speeches. I don't know how you can bear with me, but thank you very much for being here. I am extremely happy. I'm repeating this in all the sessions that I have the opportunity to participate in Fact Rio. I hope that next time it happens in a very nice place other than the United States, and I hope that it happens in Latin America again so you can get to know other countries or other states of Brazil. In the other sessions, I did not introduce myself. I am a computer scientist. I'm here from Rio. I'm doing my master's program in Unicamp, as Gilberto said, and Gilberto met me in a different context. I did the math, and we've known each other for 10 years. I'm not calling him old. I'm not calling myself old, but it has been 10 years since we met. We were young. We were teenagers. We were teenagers. And with Joanna, it's the same. So it has been a pleasure to meet them again after so many years. I grew up here in Rio de Janeiro, in Duque de Caxias, which is another city that you probably should know. It's an hour by train from here. So, and I worked here in this neighborhood, so I really know this territory. And when I started thinking about technology, I did not have the aim to visit the Silicon Valley in California. I never had this view of building a company in my garage. I didn't even have a garage, so it didn't make sense to think about this. And I started thinking about open source technology. I did not start in developing codes. I started with hardware. So it's something that I always tell because I was uncertain about going to computer science, or if I was going towards robotics and hardware, because I started working with technological scrap metal. I worked a lot with DVDs. I'm not sure if you got to know DVDs and cassette tapes. And we had Blockbusters here in Brazil, but they went bankrupt. So they would donate the tapes to me, the VHS tapes. And I could do a lot with the VHS tapes and the DVDs that they got rid of. The DVDs had presence sensors, so I took the first sensors from the DVD to study. I worked with Discman before MP3, before listening to music on Spotify. They had some presence sensors there as well. There was a system to open and close the Discman. So I work with this idea of gathering that scrap metal from different hardware equipment to think about robotics. So that was how I started my work. And I found some spaces where I could discuss about these constructions without necessarily connecting this mindset to the industry. Many people start in technology today because it is the way to change their lives somehow. It's a way to get an internship or a freelance job or a service, a formal service. So that's why people choose it sometimes, but I always intended to study. When I was 15, and it's important to contextualize to get to where I am today, I was the first daughter. I was my mother's first daughter, and she wanted to make a quinceañera for me. But I told her, I do not want a party. I want a Arduino. So I got a kit, and with this kit, I enrolled in the first competition. It was a fair called Make Fair. It was a fair for makers. So I participated in the hackathon in this fair. I was already studying programming and without being in a formal environment because the school that I studied at did not have this kind of incentive. I took my SATs and I was a great student and I got really good scores and I started getting to know people that had the same intentions with technology. I did not want to go to big techs and be a millionaire, and that was really nice because those are older people that had more experience in this topic and I learned a lot with them. So from then on, I did the degree. I had my degree in computing, and I had the same intention of trying to bring in more open view of technology. But then I was already connected to development of a software building, and that was a very nice period because I made a decision between 20 and 23 years old, and I still don't know if that was the right decision. I did not enroll for any internships of big techs as my friends. My friends are out of the country today. I'm not sure if they're good mentally, but they're living abroad, and I did not do that. I used the time to dedicate to these internships to get to know the public schools of Rio de Janeiro. And I myself created a network with the public schools of Rio de Janeiro offering robotics classes. So I did this voluntarily. I worked with mathematics teachers and Portuguese teachers that wanted to have technology in their classes. I took 3 internships to keep my volunteer view and teach for free. I worked with the schools voluntarily. And then this work with the schools, I got to know a few researchers that were not in the university that I studied at. I had to keep my scholarship as well because I had a 100% scholarship. I did not pay for school. That is a whole different experience, and I got to know researchers from the Federal University of Rio, the Federal Fluminense University, and they were carrying out some robotics Olympics. I got to know RoboCup. I never participated in the RoboCup before, and I also participated in the Brazilian Robotics Olympics. Some of them happened in Rio and these universities, and I made this decision. I don't want to continue thinking about robotics, and I now want to think about how to decentralize this development and think more about the human part. And people think that I decided to study anthropology or sociology, but I remained in computing because I think it is a territory that needs more opening and needs more movements of this kind, besides the 20% that people dedicate to volunteer projects when they work in the industry. So I usually say that it has to be part of your mindset on technology and not approaching it as something mandatory for 20% of your time and the rest of the week you do anything else other than volunteer work. This is the way that I work today, and that's how I founded the Institute. I was talking to Joanna, one of our other friends, and I told her, why didn't you tell me that it would be so difficult to start an organization? And I told her, why didn't you tell me to open an institute when I was 40? But I opened it when I was 26 with other indigenous and black activists to think about technology in a different way. Because we are set to think about technology in a certain way, and the universities or the companies. I always mention schools because it's an environment that is close to my daily routine. The institute was founded during the pandemic, so 2020 until today, we decided to focus on AI and digital security. And it's important to say that throughout this process, we had the opportunity to make a call for proposal to enroll in a call for proposals of Institute Baobá, an institution that works with financial resources for other social organizations in Brazil. They have a fund of resources that they receive from companies, and they open those specific calls for proposals in technology, education, environmental racism, and we were selected for the technology call. So we launched a course yesterday for the regions of Recife and Belém with 80 young people focused on digital security. They're going to go through the training and then mentorships, and with some partnerships with companies and universities, they will apply for internships. Some of them are more advanced. They can apply for positions or researcher positions in universities. When people see our actions, sometimes they are confused about what I do. I am an anti-racist hacker. My resume is on LinkedIn, but usually I don't talk about all of this during the lectures. I think it is important for people to think that my way of thinking about technology, even though I still do research and focus on AI, it comes from thinking about technology as an open source since the beginning, since I have had access to technology. So Joaquim just said that he doesn't know about technology. I think he knows a lot about technology, and we have to democratize our way to think about technology and think about these concepts and tell other countries. I don't like to say the rest of the world. I say it to other countries that it is possible to think about technology, generate income, and at the same time be able to mitigate some society problems without necessarily using only code. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nina. I think it was very cool to debate about this concept of technodiversity. And thinking about the concept of things is very much connected to what we apply in our daily lives. And we have to think about technology before making it happen. And this is another layer for us to think about sovereignty. Alex, it's your turn now. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank the organization for inviting me. It's a great honor to participate in this panel with these wonderful people who have been thinking about technology from different perspectives. So we have this great mix here, and we observe that technology is being well applied by people like you in different fields of knowledge as well. So please play my presentation. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this indigenous topic and the relationship of this topic with digital technology. So first I'd like to tell you about indigenous peoples and artificial co-creation. I have the same problem, so I have to stand up. What is indigenous artificial co-creation? I'm going to answer this question during the presentation, so please remain attentive. But to be able to answer this question, we have to reflect upon other issues as well. For instance, what is the contemporary indigenous culture? What are the creative expressions of indigenous peoples in Brazil? And the most important question, what is the indigenous artificial co-creation? Let's remember what artificial intelligence is. Artificial intelligence in general is a software that ends up using the questions we ask, the prompts that we send to it, providing answers in a creative way. Many times I hear, we know that, Alex, but many people are outside of our bubble and don't know about that. And to them, artificial intelligence is is a universe that is out of reach, so that intelligence provides creative responses because it's inspired in the way humans act. But what is creativity? It's the ability to produce something new, something different. And it's also considered the mental processes that involve generating ideas, solving problems, and bringing innovation. And how can we identify the creativity? We can identify that in the field of music, arts, culture, and science. What about the creative expressions from indigenous peoples? Before we talk about that, it's important that we know who are the indigenous peoples in Brazil. So today we have more than 300 indigenous peoples in Brazil, and we have 150 Aboriginal languages spoken in Brazil as well. So I'd like to highlight a point. During colonization times, more than 500 years ago, we have thousands of indigenous peoples. So you can have an idea of the decimation of indigenous peoples in Brazil and in the world. I think this is a PDF file, is it so? That's okay. What are the creative expressions of indigenous peoples in Brazil? Their expressions can be noticed on agriculture, economy, education, spirituality. The indigenous peoples have a strong relationship with spirituality, with the spirits from the forest, animal spirits, and some peoples believe that even inanimate objects, they have souls. And this has to do with our culture. And every culture has three historical moments. What are they? The past, the present, and the future. Talking about the past of indigenous peoples in Brazil, first of all, we had the mistake of Columbus when he arrived in Latin America. He thought he was coming to India, and that's why they called the indigenous peoples as Indians in the beginning, due to this meaning of coming from somewhere else. After this first moment of colonization, we see the access to new technologies. That doesn't mean that the technologies of indigenous peoples were inferior. That doesn't mean that the technologies brought by the Europeans were superior. But we had this mix of technologies. We had the technology brought from Europeans that contributed for faster actions. However, we had indigenous technologies that the Europeans had to use to be able to survive in our continent. In this process, we ended up experiencing this usurpation of rights. And especially the right to the territory, the right to land. So this space that we are in right now, it used to be an indigenous territory, but it was robbed from us. And today it's owned by other people. We have to talk about that. We must be aware about the history of our country, regardless of what happened, so that we won't repeat the same things and so that we can fight for this historical reparation. Consequently, you also have this cultural erasure. So we come to the present moment. The past led us to this moment, bringing cultural transformations. We also had many losses in terms of ancestral practices, especially our connection with spirituality, because it was considered something wrong by religion. So it was considered a tool for mass maneuver, manipulating those believers so that those people from a small group with this common interest could be demonized. So in current times, we also have access to digital technologies. And why do I say from 2009 on? Because 2009 was the year when the federal government in Brazil, at the time it was led by the current president, and it was a call for indigenous communities to be included in this digital process. So we had this different spaces for indigenous culture with access to computers, access to the internet, and then the indigenous people could have access to information. It was one of the first processes for this formal digital inclusion that was brought by the government. And in 2004, an NGO called Tidewa had worked with this digital inclusion process in indigenous communities using this project called Online Indians. And that project gave access to some indigenous communities from the Northeast to the cyberspace. And at this point, we had, in the beginning of the years 2000s, this access by indigenous people here in Brazil. Some details about this process of digital inclusion. If you're curious about that, you may find it in this research study. The name in Portuguese is below, and it's called "And the Verb Became Digital, a narrative about indigenous culture, technology, and training." I was able to talk about this digital inclusion project. It was a research study that was not important in itself, because we must give a return to the community, and it was a great opportunity to me. And then I ended up delving deeper in that subject on how the indigenous peoples are using the tools in this later moment reconfiguring their identities. Because from the point that you have access to new kinds of technology, you also reconfigure some habits. And now we have this future vision. Uh, it's not the PPT presentation, it's the PDF, but what you need to know is that the future of indigenous people is uncertain. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Our future with technology is also uncertain. However, we can try to foresee the future. We can try to design this future, and we can take opportunity of this kind of space to reflect upon that. How can we use the new technologies to improve well-being, to improve life, to improve society so that it can be a fair and equity society? How can we do that? With this background on the indigenous peoples and how this relationship between the indigenous peoples and the new technologies happened, this question emerged. Are indigenous people already appropriating AI to co-create? So this is the most important question now. Are they able to do that as well? This is a doubt that many people have. So I can answer you, yes, the indigenous peoples have been using the new technologies of artificial intelligence in order to co-create. And last year I had contact with this research study with the Dublin University and Iowa, and they invited some artists from Latin America so that could have contact with this artificial intelligence software called Omni Journey. They had contact with this website, and they were able to explore what the tool brings, and they also generated some images based on this interaction. In the organizing team, we have an indigenous person, and they asked the artists to think about the future of indigenous peoples within 50 years. Just for you to understand, if you want to understand more about this research study, this is the contact information of those coordinating. Sandra is one indigenous person from Colombia, and here are some images that were generated by Omni Journey on how the indigenous future would be within 50 years. So I brought these images to you, and you may access the whole collection of arts produced by these indigenous people in this website created for the project. But unfortunately, the website has been suffering hacker attacks, and I don't know if it's happening because people are against the access of indigenous populations to new technologies. I don't know why this is happening. And an indigenous woman who participated in the project as an artist, she moved me with her declaration. She said that the first time she heard about artificial intelligence, for her reality, it was something very distant, something she wouldn't be able to reach. And through this project that provided access to them, she was able to access this tool, and she started to understand that this technology is not so far from her. She can have access to technology, and she can find means to do that. This is another slide just to tell you that the artists made the works, but after making the works, they also reflected upon the works, and they also questioned the use of these tools to create artworks within the indigenous context. And on YouTube, we are able to visualize some of the works and some statements by the artists telling us about the experience for them. So what happens then? During those reflections, some questions arise. We had some critical points about the use of artificial intelligence by the indigenous people. The images were not reflecting the indigenous reality. And why was that? Because the database that was fed with images from indigenous peoples during the colonization, as they were described by those who came to colonize this population. So they didn't feel represented by those results, those outcomes. And they also reflected upon the reinforcements of stereotypes. In some images, they didn't show the indigenous naked, but you could notice the same features from indigenous people during the colonization. So we have different peoples, different features for different communities. And besides, biological transformation also happened. Our bodies changed because we were rape victims as well, and so on and so forth. And we also reflected about the prejudice, because the tool ends up strengthening prejudices concerning the recognition of indigenous people. You don't look like an indigenous person. And what is an indigenous face? We don't know. So another issue that emerged is that it was questioned if this work art that was made with the help of artificial intelligence would have a soul. That was an important issue. And to illustrate this question, I would like to bring this necklace to you. My cousin gave me this necklace, and when she made that, she went to the woods, she chose the seeds, she separated each part of and each object that would be part of this necklace, and she was always thinking about that, about me. I'm making this necklace to Alex. So we believe that her soul was included in that object.
And during the creation with artificial intelligence, we also wondered, can I consider that I energized that artifact or not? So that is a question to leave hanging for you. With these 3 points, we had some reflections during this experience with Midjourney. We also worked on the question, what can we do regarding these findings and many other findings that I did not brought to you today. So in the meeting, this March 2024, we met in the University of Leeds, and we put our actions into practice. We researched. We brought the research. We used the tool. And in the middle of this meeting in Leeds, to have a small exhibition of the works of art built by the indigenous peoples, we decided to build a tool of AI designed by us, indigenous peoples. That is what happened during this Leeds encounter. We had this discussion, and for you to have an idea, this tool is now under construction. This tool is not going to be made public for now. It is going to work as a pilot project. We are discussing some ethical concept, especially related to how we're going to capture the images. Each artist was committed to getting the authorization of their peoples regarding which images they will be able to use, and this tool is going to respect the singularities of each people. But we will only know that once we run it. Right now, we are in the stage of construction. And here I answer the final question that I asked to you earlier. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alex. Many things, many stories. I think we are almost in a circle here, and we may evoke some of the feelings that the circle brings to recover some of the topics that we discussed. We have little time for debate, but I would like you to conclude your ideas in 3 more minutes and try to listen to the others and connect some of the topics. After hearing from all of you, I was left wondering about sovereignty. How will we be sovereign? Creating our own technologies, by inventing our own labs, handling our own social organizations in our territories, with our communities. The question that is very strong for me is, what are we going to do with the corporations? Because they are the ones that are behind all of the oppressions that happen in our history. Production told me that we do not have time for debate. Is it right? Oh, I'm sorry. The timer here was wrong. It said 10 minutes, but I would like you to make your final comments. The audience can talk to the guests outside during coffee break, and I'm sorry for the lack of time for debate. Thank you very much. I would like to hear now from you for 3 minutes about your conclusions. I have to not lose hope. It's my obligation. So I think all of these technologies, blockchains, metaverse, and so on, for a mind like mine, I'm 64 years old. I know that I employ efforts. I read. I try to study it. But where I live, every day, without exception, there is a line of people waiting to get food in the format of donations because they don't have anything to eat. So all of this that is coming up in terms of technology, this future in technology, is very important. We cannot deny it. It is important to have all of that. But how can we do that with social justice? How is the person in line to get food because they are starving will understand what is AI? You can remember that in Brazil, out of 10 people, 3 do not have access to the internet. And I think technology has to help that, has to implement social justice somehow. Whenever I have speeches like this, people tell me, oh, you complain about this company, but if Amazon wants and you start disturbing the Brazilian financial market, you are a different type of bank. You are doing a sort of parallel bank. If Amazon finds this bad, they will unplug all of your operations. So we have to take this seriously. I think as a layperson, I cannot depend on Google, Amazon, Netflix. In my community, with my people, we created the WhatsApp of the neighborhood. We have an app that only works in our neighborhood. We call it the neighborhood WhatsApp. And we have to understand that we're going towards a catastrophe. In Rio Grande do Sul, for example, we had the floods and they had to reinvent themselves. We're going to find paths to deal with the catastrophe. Actually, I would like to know if anybody has any questions or comments because this panel is called Decolonial Technology. You are in Rio, so if you have any comments in the audience, it will be more interesting to than I say something in 3 minutes. I am actually giving you my time. Do we have anyone from the audience that would like to speak?
Do simultaneous translation? No? Okay. My name is Sita. I'm based in London. And I'm really struck and touched by your story, so thank you. I have a question about the very little history of computing that I know from Brazil. And I'm wondering if, I think his name is Álvaro Vieira Pinto, and some of the thinking that happened in that era inform and connect to what you're thinking and doing today.
Thank you, Professor. I did watch your panel, so thank you. And I will answer you outside because of the time, but I use my time to people that can share some comments and some questions. So, obrigada, gente. Eu usei meu tempo para as pessoas da plateia porque
Thank you very much. I use my time for people in the audience because you had to make comments and questions. So I'm going to answer you outside, okay? Thank you very much. Well, let's dialogue, and I think we can get there. So let's continue the dialogue over coffee. Thank you so much.